My roommate paid rent on time, the only problem. He never came home, at least that's what I thought. For 3 months, my roommate paid rent and never came home. It seemed like the best house share I'd ever had. Finding someone in this city is always a risk. Desperate ads and 10-minute meetings with strangers, trying to decide if you can trust them in your home. After my last arrangement ended with my roommate trying to install a home podcast studio in the middle of the living room at 3 a.m., all I wanted was something uncomplicated. Someone who pays their rent on time and basically stays out of my way. Leo seemed perfect for that. He was a geological consultant and worked overseas constantly. According to the ad, he was sometimes gone for months at a time. He just needed a home address, somewhere to store some belongings, and a place to crash a few times a year for maybe a week or so every few months. What he was willing to pay in rent seemed like a lot, considering he'd barely be here, but he explained that ease was more important than price for him, and he liked my apartment's location. We met once in a coffee shop. He was normal, polite, clean-cut, firm handshake. By the time we finished our coffee, he had transferred 3 months' rent plus the security deposit. He was off to South America the next morning and said he wouldn't be back for 3 months. He moved his stuff in that afternoon when I was out, so I never saw him. It seemed like the perfect scenario, a roommate who existed mostly on paper. For 2 months it was. The apartment was silent and calm. It felt like I had the place to myself, only cheaper. Then little things started happening. The first time was subtle enough I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. A framed photo of my sister and I, which I usually kept on a table near the front door, was on the living room bookshelf. I stood there for a long minute trying to remember putting it there. I couldn't recall ever touching it. I was busy, tired, stressed with work, and so it seemed like the obvious explanation that I'd done it subconsciously and forgotten. I put it back and tried not to think about it. A week later, my favorite coffee mug went missing. It wasn't in the cupboards, the sink, or the dishwasher. After about 10 minutes, I found it in the bathroom sink. I tried to remember bringing coffee into the bathroom, drinking it while I brushed my teeth, but no memory came. I again told myself I was being too stressed, too forgetful, but the apartment began to feel different after that. The quiet that had previously been calming was now watchful. The building creaked and settled at night the same way it always had, but each sound seemed more intentional. Then the food started to disappear, not in large quantities, nothing obvious. A single apple from the bowl, a missing slice of cheese from a new package, the kind of thing you doubt yourself over. I started paying more attention to the fridge contents. The next day, the pull tab on a can of soda was on the counter. I hadn't opened it. It was at that point the true dread began to sink in. Leo's door at the end of the hall remained shut. He had now been gone for almost 3 months. We'd only corresponded via email twice, once for the rent confirmation, and once because I asked him how the project was going. Indefinite. Project extended, hope all is well. One evening when I came home, I noticed a smell, faint but definitely there. Earthy, metallic, slightly damp. It was wrong. The smell seemed to come from Leo's room. I sniffed closer to his door. Was something forgotten inside, spilled when he left, but it didn't smell like any specific thing I could think of. That night I woke up to a soft scraping sound from the hall. I sat bolt upright, straining to hear. I watched the crack of light under my door, expecting a shadow to pass. No shadow came. I eventually decided it was just the old building shifting. The next morning I found the footprint. It was on the kitchen tile, just a few feet from Leo's door. A muddy imprint from the front of a boot with dark soil clinging to it. My blood went cold. The smell, the food, the mug, the footprint. Someone had been inside my apartment. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? A moved mug, some dirt on the floor. I knew what the response would be. For the next week I jumped at every sound. I put a chair against my bedroom door at night. I couldn't tell which thought was more frightening, that I wasn't alone in the apartment, or that I was actually losing my mind. But then last Tuesday night I came home and noticed Leo's door was ajar. It hadn't been opened in months. I just stood at the entrance, paralyzed. Leo, no answer. Leo, are you home? Nothing. My hands were trembling as I made my way down the hallway. I pushed the door open further and felt for the light switch. The room was completely empty. There was no bed, no dresser, no boxes or possessions. Nothing. It was as if no one had ever lived in the room at all. The only thing I could see in the room was a Polaroid photograph taped at eye level on the opposite wall. I walked across and peeled it from the wall. It was me, sleeping in my own bed. Taken from the foot of the mattress, my face looked ghostly and blank from the flash. The chair was visible, jammed against the handle of my bedroom door in the background of the photograph. It was dated on the back from the night before. My stomach clenched and I stumbled backward, my heel catching on something on the floor behind the door, a canvas duffel bag. Inside, tangled and muddy with thorns clinging to them, were my clothes, and photos, dozens of them, of me cooking, sitting on the couch, watching TV, standing by the sink. In the side pocket of the duffel bag, a small plastic bag contained chunks of my hair and nail clippings. I ran. I left my apartment without any of my belongings, calling the police from the nearest gas station 2 miles away. When the police searched the apartment, they found nothing. Leo's room was empty and clean of all evidence. There was no duffel bag, no photographs, and no scent of him lingering in the room. The landlord stated that Leo had paid his rent and didn't seem to know anything about him. Leo's cell number was disconnected, the only record of his presence being a driver's license linked to a PO box. I moved cities 2 days ago. I can't say where I am. I have 3 locks on my front door, and each night I wake up with the distinct feeling that someone is standing at my doorway, watching. I thought I had found the perfect roommate, someone who was never there. The truth is, he was always there.